A few months ago, I rebuilt the H-10-44 to better fit the scope of the fictional Nonsense Wars Railroad. I turned it into an ex-Pennsylvania unit since most other NW equipment comes from the East, and furthermore, FM built 10 times as many H-10-44s for the PRR than for the UP. 55 to 5. Finally, I gave it a coat of brick weathering. I wanted something to go with the Trinity gondolas, having taken apart the U-30B. Unfortunately, I don't think brick weathering works quite as well on the H-10-44 as it does on some other models. So let's talk about it. As with any sort of modeling, I first want to consider prototypes. What does weathering actually look like? In this case, individual instances might turn out vastly different, so I find it more useful to try and understand how it works, what causes various artifacts, etc. Let's start with a clean piece of rolling stock. Load and unload it a few times, and the paint will begin to mar and chip. Dirt and grime kicked up from the ground will build up on the lower part of the body. All the while, rust will begin to form anywhere that water can pool, and even more so where the bare metal comes through. Eventually, even the sun will take its toll and begin to fade the most exposed paint. While traditional modelers might implement each of these blemishes explicitly, LEGO does not have enough resolution or color depth to do so. Instead, I have to cartoon them, like with other small features on these 1:48 scale models. For example, I can't make a gradient by stacking progressively lighter or darker shades of gray. I have to make it by progressively spacing out the source and destination colors, and hopefully not too uniformly. I used the sides of 1x1 plates as an example because this formation provides very good brick resolution without requiring special building techniques. If possible, I try to convert all relevant surfaces into 1x1 plates, or the smallest possible element, before attempting to implement weathering. Herein lies the biggest problem. A lot of models don't break down into small enough parts to support a convincing pattern. Take the H-10-44, for example. I can turn the entire hood minus the grills into a grid of 1x1s, though some tiles do reinforce seams. I could technically break down the size of the frame, but that would definitely start cutting into structural integrity. I can't, however, at least for this version of the FM, do anything about the monolithic train motors and frames, which also don't have any practical color options. This prevents me from applying a consistent coat of grime, and largely limits the weathering to the ends and the top of the locomotive. Brick-built bogies would certainly help, but since I only run the FM on 9-volt motors, I am building this version specifically for that use case, and I have not yet found a way to make brick-built frames work. The mounting system I used on the CF7 interferes with the frame on the H-10-44, which sits one plate lower. I suppose the TLDR is that some builds weather better than others, and I could potentially keep that in mind while designing, though other models can still work well despite their limitations. The Trinity gondolas and my recently weathered N6A caboose both have structural rails that require relatively long tiles, but I don't think they hurt the overall implementations as much as the train motors hurt the FM. The actual play might be to clean up the H-10-44 and weather the RF-16 instead. As I said in the train fleet update, that engine could use some kind of rebuild to update the cab windows. Finally, let's take a look at the wear spots on the model, courtesy of the previous version, before I took it apart. On that note, this is the end of the video. Please consider subscribing if you like what we do, and have a nice day.